the only other thing that's happening right now, kind of like that I'm paying attention to at least. Oh no, my site's dead again. Might just be a bad node though. Let's see, can I resurrect it? The way that it works is that the site has a bunch of different forward nodes and then some middle nodes. And then the actual back end. So because what the guy is doing right now, because right now I'm streaming and he knows that, so that's why he's DDoS attacking right now, because otherwise I would just fix it. But he sends a network level attack against the front ends one at a time, and then he also does a layer 7 against the Tor. So the middle nodes lock up. The back end is doing just fine, but the middle nodes and the front ends are choking because they're being hit with two different kinds of attacks. Yeah, that's just a lot of HTTP. Because what I would like to do is play a clip of Nick Fuentes. You know what, I'm gonna be sneaky here. I'm gonna try to open Tor and see if the Tor node actually works. Because I'm vaguely familiar that or vaguely aware that the Tor node likes to work when the main site doesn't, but he is using Tor to hammer it. Let's see. If not, that's fine. I'll just talk about I'll use that as an excuse to segue into the kiwi farm stuff, and then I'll save the Ralph stuff for later if I can manage to get it. All right, now I suppose I will just talk about the kiwi farm stuff. So last week I did not stream. I was busy. I was doing stuff. I could not have a nice sit down to talk to you guys as I enjoy doing. So I instead I did very little with the forum. I should explain that before. Actually, I had my stream with Jim, and then the next day, I think, it might have been 2 days later, it was on Sunday, I'm pretty sure, everyone's avatar on the Kiwi Farm starts changing to the post logo, and I'm confused about this, and my first idea is, let me check and see if I can actually verify the avatar is changing, because there's so many moving parts now. I thought maybe they compromised or found some way to fuck with the image cache so that they could just make everybody's avatar look like the post logo. So then I go up and I pull up the image out of the server, and sure enough, the avatars are actually changing. So I know that whatever they're doing is actually instructing the server to make a change, which is a more serious compromise than fucking with the mid-level image caches. So from there, I start looking at the logs, and then as I'm doing that, I notice that the forum actually starts getting deleted. One node after the other, they start getting deleted. So I say, that is definitely somebody in the admin control panel deleting the nodes. The site has been compromised, probably session hijacking, because that's usually what it is. And I shut down the site. The next day, or throughout that day and into the next day, I start looking at what it could be. And my initial assumption was that one of the forward nodes had been compromised because vsys.host, which is a Ukrainian service, had announced that they had a compromise the day before. And I thought, oh, what they probably did was they got access to that forward node and they found a way to man in the middle it and extract session tokens. So when I coincidentally connected through that node, my session token was intercepted. And that would be pretty bad because it would mean that passwords could also be exposed. Basically, any information could be intercepted. That was my initial assumption, and that's why I told people initially to assume that the password had been stolen, because as far as I was aware, that could be the truth. That was not the case. The truth was a little bit simpler. What happened is that on Zenforo, there is no kind of media validation. So you can take a HTML file, a web document, and you can rename it .mp3, or in this case, .opus. And the server will accept this and think it's an opus file and allow you to attach it as a audio file. And this is, in and of itself, a pretty big security risk. But it's not the payload injection. They needed something else for that. So in the chat, there was a bug where someone could insert an iframe and reference a script. And they had to do it like this because the way that the chat worked is that it would only accept scripts on the same domain name or ones that had a token attached to them. So they couldn't just inject a script and have that run because unsafe inline wasn't allowed. They had to find some way to upload a script to the site so that the iframe could then be executed, bypassing security rules. So that's why they had to upload it as an opus file using Zen4.0. And then they used the iframe in the chat to actually run it. And this did a couple things. It first of all, it sent your session token to the attacker, and the attacker could then use that as a cookie on their browser to log in to your account. It then automatically sent a request to the avatar page to change your avatar to the post logo. If you were an admin, it also sent your admin token and then a copy of the PHP info, which is a printout of server information that PHP creates on a certain page in Zen4.0 in the admin panel. From there, he was able to log in, because I opened chat, he was able to log in through my account, and then I tracked what he did in the server logs, and what he tried to do was go to the user page to download all the user information. However, he tried to download every record at once, and that caused it to just break, and he did not manage, as far as I'm aware, he did not manage to get a copy of the user list. He also tried to download information from the add-ons page, and I don't think he got any useful information from that. And then when he, I don't know what happened. I don't know why he decided to delete nodes, because that tipped me off that the admin panel was compromised. I shut down the site because I knew what was going on. And while it was a very, especially because of the timing, it was very serious. And it was very, even if nothing leaks, it had the potential to cause a big leak. And that's upsetting. And I'm not happy with that, obviously. It could have been worse, because the day after, I had my family emergency. If it had happened at a different time, if it had happened during that week, I would not have been able to respond at all. It would have taken me hours and hours to respond, as opposed to me actively investigating it while things were actually going on. So as far as that went, it happened about as well as it could have for us. So I'm thankful for that. And it's annoying because it's like a juvenile mistake. There were so many different ways that I could have prevented that. And I've really gone overboard now. I've gone through Zen4.0 and I've tried to clean it up as best I can. I've configured the web server to be as, God fucking damn it, to be as aggressive as I can possibly get it, so that there is no further risk with cross-session scripting. I'm going to have someone review that eventually, probably soon. So that is the issue with the hack. So when the hack happened, I shut it down. And then while I was investigating, I got my call. I went out to deal with my issue, and I just left the server down. I let it to cool off. I let it to see where the chips fell, to see where everything landed. And then after a week, I took the weekend off too. I could have started bringing things up on the weekend, but I decided against it. I did some minor work. I was reformatting everything, so all the servers, just as a precaution, and kind of tinkering with my config, and I started bringing them up. So Monday, I was busy setting everything up, and then on Tuesday, I was able to bring the site up. Tuesday went pretty well. Wednesday and Thursday went pretty well, but now there is the DDoS attack again, and I'm dealing with that. the main issue is not network attacks. The main issue is application layer attacks. So we have a open source thing right now that we're working on. Someone in particular, I don't know if he wants a shout out or whatever, is working on it. And it's working pretty good. There are some issues with it that can, I don't want to say right now because it would be a pain in the ass. It's not like security issues, it's just like effectiveness issues. But there are ways to deal with it, and that's just going to get done over time. Right now, what they're doing, like the attacks are just like stupid. It's just bashing your head against the wall. Extremely juvenile, unsophisticated, easily mitigated. It's just a matter of having enough computer to mitigate it. And you don't need much, I don't think, because what they're doing right now is not so effective. So I'm working on that. There's more computer I can throw at it very easily. And when I have time, that's what I'll do. When I say application layer attack, that's DDoS attacks. In computer tech terminology, there are layers to a program. Layer 1 is the physical hardware. So a layer 1 attack would be me taking a hammer to my computers. That's a layer 1 attack. Layer 3 and 4 are network level. So when somebody is sending in a flood of bandwidth to a server, that is a network or level attack, a 3 or 4 attack. And then in a layer 7 or application layer attack, it's designed to, it's kind of like, the attack is designed so that it's low bandwidth but high impact. So for instance, when you request a web page, the server has to spend a great deal of time not a great deal of time ideally, but a amount of time, even if it's only milliseconds, but that's much more time than it takes for you to make a request. It takes nanoseconds for you to send a request. So you can send 100 requests, every 100 milliseconds easily, and then it's probably going to take more than that amount of time for your web server to respond to those requests. Just because even if it's a very efficient application, if it doesn't have any kind of scrutiny in regards to what request it serves, it's vulnerable to being overloaded by simply asking too many times. So an application level filter is one that provides some sanity to how you handle requests. And right now, the application level filter is doing a very good job in making sure that the web server itself is not impacted by any fictitious requests. And that's why you get the little bot page. It's open source, so it's going to be a game of cat and mouse, unfortunately, depending on how dedicated they are. But any effort spent breaking this is pretty much dedicated towards hurting the kiwi farms alone. And I don't think that the people against us are particularly intelligent, so they're at a disadvantage by default. And over time, I can just, I can dedicate more resources to it. I can build proper servers. I can get something like a set of servers. Like, all it takes to handle this is a little bit of CPU. And more importantly, threads over processing power. So you can get a CPU that has 64 threads at a low clock rate, like 2.1 gigahertz, for very little. And then you can get 3 of these. You can fit 3 of these into a single, 1 unit rack in your data center. So it's very space compartmentalized. And then all they do is they apply a very, quick set of rules to each request to see if they're valid, and then discard the ones that aren't. If it comes down to that, I'll do that. I'll build my own. I'll build my own everything. I don't give a fuck. I'm so tired of being told by bullshit faggot companies that I can't do things. And it's like, I absolutely can. What you're doing is not impossible for ordinary people to replace. It's just difficult. It just requires effort. And the more localized a solution is, the more impractical it is to defeat it. When you have something like reCAPTCHA or Cloudflare, there's a lot of money in being able to defeat reCAPTCHA and Cloudflare because everybody uses them. If you find a way to break reCAPTCHA or break Cloudflare, you actually have something you can sell to the black market for a ton of money. If you spend, a bunch of hours breaking the Kiwi Farms DDoS mitigation service. Who the fuck is going to buy that? The people who would want to bring me down are like insane trannies. You know what I mean? There's not as big a market for that kind of mitigation bypass. So it's the serious black hats who are in it for the money, who are the people you should be afraid of, the people who are going to ransom your computers, are not going to be interested in bypassing something like that. So I think that's the roundup as far as like the technical stuff goes. The site was hacked. I don't know if anything. I have yet to see any verifiable information that anything has come out from it. When we're not under DDoS attack, the site works very well. The issue with the DDoS attack is mostly lateral. It's a matter of getting enough computers, enough bandwidth, and enough mid-level mitigation so that the attack is not as effective as it would like to be. And then also, one more thing that I've set up. When I was hosting on the .st, kiwifarms.st, I was using a DNS. And if you don't know, a DNS is a way of resolving a domain name server. And the way that DNS works is very complicated. It's a bunch of different layers owned by different companies. But basically, when you type in kiwifarms.s or .net, that means nothing to your computer. Your computer doesn't know what the fuck that means. It knows what an IP is, but it doesn't know how to turn a domain name into an IP address. So there's levels to it. Your computer asks your own personal DNS what that means, and usually that's provided by your ISP. It can often be Google or Cloudflare's 1.1.1.1, or Google's 8.8.8.8, but usually it's your ISPs or it's your VPNs. So that server actually doesn't know where the Kiwi Farms is either. To resolve that, they look in a zone. So .net is owned by a company called VeriSign, and VeriSign keeps track of another kind of a record called an NS record. So when your domain name server wants to figure out where kiwifarms.net is, it asks VeriSign what the registrar is and where the NS records are. And then that provides the name servers and IPs of that record, and then that your domain server takes the NS servers for the domain and then asks those servers where that record is located, and then that the DNS servers that your domain is pointed at will return the A record. Sounds very complicated, but in general, your DNS is managed by another company, because who the fuck would want to run something like that? That sounds like hell. Cloud DNS was one that I use for .st because it's very useful for this exact purpose. What I'm doing is not actually that unique. There are a lot of companies, a lot of websites out there that are resilient to takedowns because they are pirate websites. So when you go to pirate a movie, or you go to look at some, what's the other bit? Oh, the porn sites that pirate like OnlyFans content. When you go pirate, OnlyFans content, those sites are hounded with abuse complaints constantly. They're very resilient to complaints because of how much bullshit they get for hosting OnlyFans shit. So, what they use is very similar. They have a domain name server and they usually use Cloud DNS. That's how I got referred. I think the Pirate Bay used them. So what you do is you have 20 front ends and you plug them all into Cloud DNS and you tell it, I want you to do a health check on each of these every minute and set a time limit so that when you make a request, you usually keep that response. Like, what's kiwifarms.net? It's this IP. You keep that response for a TTL, time to live. Usually 5 minutes, but it can be up to an hour, up to a day, depending on how confident the source is that record will be unchanging. Cloud DNS does the opposite and says set it for 60 seconds. We have no confidence that this record will be alive at any given time, and we want to set it for as little as possible. And we want to do a health check on each of those. So every minute it does a ping. If it gets a pong back, then it keeps the record up and serves it out. And if it doesn't, then it drops the record. So this is how you keep a bunch of front ends that are being attacked by DDoS attacks and complaints, and they're getting service yanked and yada, 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 all this shit. That's how you keep it nice and snappy for the end user. It's very important. Cloud DNS dropped us. The trannies complained to Cloud DNS. And then what's really funny, what's hysterical about this is that when Cloud DNS dropped us, they hijacked our name server records and redirected it to a parking page, because that's what everyone does. They take our DNS and they point it to some bullshit that advertises their fucking garbage. However, Cloud DNS's hosting is actually provided by something called like Imprivio or Hosterion. And when kiwifarms.st was just pointing towards the Cloud DNS parking page, the trannies still complained to Hosterion saying that they were providing a parking page for kiwifarms.st, and they made Cloud DNS take down our parking page because they didn't want the heat from that. That's nuts to me. Because I got pinged, and I was like, who is Hosterion? Do you use them? Because they're talking to the trannies on Twitter. I'm like, I've never even heard of Hosterion. What the fuck do I use them for? Are they like a parent company to one of the VPS providers? No, they were Cloud DNS's parking page provider, which is hysterical. So after that, I said, okay, Epic's domain name, Epic is our domain registrar. Epic has its own name servers. However, Epic does not have the really fast time to live records with the health checks and stuff. I told them that would be a great thing to add to their service. They may agree with and add that later, but for right now they don't have it and I need it. So I've set up my own domain name servers, and I'm going to have to fortify those as well. And the really funny thing about how domain name servers work is that they're very, very small. So I can rent a $5 VPS in a million different places and have 20 different name server records and shit these out, basically, as fast as I want, and just have them scale horizontally as much as I want. So I'm looking at that. The issue is that right now the rotation doesn't work as I want. I'm using Power DNS, and for whatever reason the if URL up Lua script thing does not work. I don't know if I'm using it wrong. I don't know what the fuck the issue is. However, that is where I'm stuck at currently, and I'm hoping to get that resolved, because it was with Cloud DNS, it was actually working really fucking great, and I would love to get that operating as it was before. And I think that's it. Does the class have any questions for me regarding the bullshit hoops that I've been jumping through the last 2 weeks? We're not talking about the website nerd. How's Fedora been for you? I've been on Windows. I've been on Windows because I didn't feel like I had to deal with a bunch of shit. I didn't feel like importing all my settings and stuff, so I just switched back to Windows. I found a nice console thing with tabs on it. What will my DNS be called? Oh god, when I start offering all these different services, I'll have to brand them and stuff. I might as well at this point. Let's see. Keep it up, Jerish. Will this be on the test? Absolutely, it will be. How are you still saying? I'm having fun. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I know a lot of people are like, "Aren't you stressed out?" And it's like, yeah, it's a little bit stressful, and sometimes I get anxious about stuff. But like, you know, you just deal with shit. You just deal with shit, and I enjoy the game, and I like setting up. I really. If I had to pick a job, I would just want to set up servers all the time. I like deploying stuff. I like playing with new computers. I like trying out. Right now, I'm using FreeBSD on a lot of my servers, and it's like, well, I'm setting up 10 servers a day. I might as well try out FreeBSD, and I'm having a lot of fun with FreeBSD. FreeBSD is great. I'll probably use that for more stuff in the future. I've had some experience with it, and I'm trying it again, and I like it. It's all a learning experience, and I genuinely enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy playing with computers. I have fun, and I don't let what people say get to me. I just don't care. And I remember when I first started hosting the forum, I was really afraid of people finding my picture, because I thought, like, I never wanted to be one of those people that had their pictures floating around and getting photoshopped and stuff. And then it happened, and people photoshop you into horrible things, and you're just like, oh, I was afraid of literally nothing. This does not fucking matter at all. I just, and I think that has to do with a lot with like the Blockland stuff, like because people said terrible things about me, as a teenager, and a lot of it was true, and a lot of it wasn't, and you just kind of build up a tolerance to it. It's like, the people who I like and who I need in my life trust me, and they know who I am, and they like me. And the people that I don't need in my life believe whatever bullshit they want, and it doesn't bother me. It's only frustrating when it's like a service provider or something. But then it's like, I'll just replace you. Cloudflare wasn't offering anything unique. It was the most available, easiest to get set up. But it's like, it's at the end of the day, it's just a fucking web page that checks if it's human traffic. It's a complicated, open-ended question, but it's not this mystical, unattainable thing. It can be replicated, maybe not as well for its purpose of serving 80% of all websites on the internet, but it can be replicated to some extent. Let's get them banned from FreeBSD. Oh, jeez. Speaking of, while I was setting up the Kiwi farms, and thank you for reminding me of that, I had an issue. Right now, I'm still having networking issues, and a lot of my computers are stuck behind IPv6. So I need shit to work with IPv6. If it doesn't work with IPv6, it's a bigger pain in my ass. Thankfully, IPv6 came out 10 years ago. IPv4s have been completely depleted worldwide for like 5 years now. We are out of IPv4 addresses. They're a finite number, and when the IPv4 standard came out in the 80s, 90s, a long time ago, they were very willy-nilly about delegating subnets. So when you look at an IP string, you have 4 sets of numbers between 0 and 255. Many of those IP addresses are special purpose. It's like the number 10, the first number 10. That's called a /8. That is 1/255th of, or 256th of all IPs that exist is special purpose local network. 192.168 is a 16 special purpose local network. 000, I'm pretty sure everything that starts with the 0 is special purpose. I think 255 is also special purpose. So that's like 256 of the entire IPv4 range, special purpose. And then the Department of Defense asked for IP addresses, and they gave them like more than an 8. They gave them like a multiple 8. So then like a huge chunk of the internet just got patricianed to the Department of Defense, and they don't even fucking use them. Their IPs are like completely internal. They don't use them at all for public facing purposes, and they're just gone. So we've known for a while that that we are running out of IPs, which is why in 2012 they released the IPv6 standard. And for a lot of countries, like in APNIC, they told Japan at a very early point, you will get no more IPv4 addresses. You're one of the richest countries in the world. You're one of the most technologically developed in the world. You have no fucking excuse. Get your people using IPv6 now. We're not giving you anymore. So they said, fine. So now if you go to Japan, 100% chance that no matter what computer you're on, if it's a desktop computer or a mobile phone, it will be an IPv6 range, of which there are like quadrillions of these IPv6 ranges. It's like it went from a /32 is the most precise to a /128. It's like a factor of a factor of a factor. It's like an immense amount of space allocated to IPv6. So anyways, my point is that almost everything uses IPv6, except on Debian. There is a repository and an open source stuff, the way that code works, and this is why people like Linux a lot more than Windows, is that you don't download a .exe and run it to install a program. You just do apt-get whatever the fuck I want, and it downloads it from a repository. And there are many repositories, and they're managed by usually pretty big, serious organizations that take their job seriously and make sure that their packages work for the distributions that they're targeting. Except for PHP. PHP, the programming language that runs Zenforo that I use for my fucking website, is managed for Debian by Surrey.org, which is like one fucking faggot at the Czech Republic, a man who cannot stop sucking dick for a nanosecond, a guy who sits on like the board of the CZNIC for the top level domain CZ. This guy, a literal incarnation of the soy boy meme, like single-handedly manages the Surrey repository for PHP. And it doesn't use IPv6. So I leave a comment on this 4-year-old ticket on GitHub saying, why is there no IPv6 support? And the faggot is just like, Lamau, I don't want to use IPv6. And this is the only repository that does this. It is trivial. It is trivial to set up IPv6 support. They want you to use it. They'll throw it at you. They'll help you set it up. It's real fucking easy. So they really want you to use IPv6, but he's just like, nah, you know what? I don't feel like it, which is literally the case. He has a CDN, and the CDN has IPv6. All he has to do is plug the fucking IPs into his domain name server, and it has IPv6 support. Like fucking magic. It just works. Doesn't have it. So I leave a comment saying this is unacceptable. It is for God's sakes, it's 2022. The IPv6 standard has been out for a fucking decade. It would be in middle school right now if it was a person. Okay, it's time to get IPv6 support working on your fucking package repository, because a lot of computers use it, and a lot of networks, especially in developing countries, have no option but to use it. So you have no excuse. From a woke standpoint, it makes sense. From a modern technological standpoint, it's absolutely necessary. And he replies to me, and he takes the quote, this is unacceptable, and goes, Lamau. And then some guy says, have you ever donated to Surrey? Have you ever given money to support the wonderful free source project that you use on a daily basis? Like, just fucking mushmouthing me. So I'm like, okay, motherfucker. I find his Bitcoin wallet, and I send him $250 in Bitcoin from the Kiwi Farms public address, which a bunch of fucking weirdos are stalking right now. So I gave that motherfucker money so that everyone would see that I gave him money. And I said, look, I just gave you money from the Kiwi Farms address just like you fucking liked. I want my IPv6 addresses to work. And then afterwards he's like, oh, you neo-Nazi murderer, you terrorist, I know of your PHP applications, this is unacceptable. And then Liz Dongon jumps in and says, sir, I have a list of all his IPs, you can block him. And then he's like, what trans group can I give this money to really piss off those Yahtzees? Who can I give this $250 to? I don't need it. I'll give it to the trans children. And then I assume that he's blocked my IPs so I can't download PHP on fucking Debian, which means, chat, I'm going to have to add a proxy to my apt config so that I can download PHP through IPv4, because I'm assuming the dumb motherfucker hasn't figured out how to add a triple or a quadruple A record to his DNS yet, and download it secretly, smuggle that code into my Kiwi Farms so that my people can sneed. It's just crazy. It's nonsense. Lunatics run open source. And then on the flip side is that more and more often, I am researching something, I'm searching a problem, I'm searching a solution, I'm searching for a new open source project, and guess what I find? I find it in Chinese. I find an interesting idea executed and with documentation 100% in Chinese. And that is why, chat, this is a prime example of why I caution people not to just say, all them Chanks can do is steal from the white man. All them yellow bug men can do is steal on the accomplishments of the white man. And what's funny is that even the liberals do that. You say, hey, what about China? Don't you consider like China to be like a threat? And like, oh my god, like the fucking like thinky slant eyes like can't do anything that like whitey can do. Like whitey, like people, like our liberal democracy like makes the best open source code. And it's like, okay, I guess everyone is just agreed that China is no fucking threat. Meanwhile, in the open source development department, we got trannies who can't figure out how to do IPv6 telling soy boys how to block my IP so I can't download PHP as if I can't just fucking use a proxy to get it anyways. And then in China, they're like actually building shit. They're using their communist state propaganda to proliferate the communist ideals and the mechanisms of free open source software. It's a terrible state of the world. And I'm being serious about that. the writing is on the fucking walls. Them Chanks, they've stolen all they can steal from the white man, and now they're turning heel and digging in, and they're pointing our own guns back at us. And one day, they'll have bigger and better bullets than our guns do, and they'll have better websites too. They'll have their own Cloudflare, and they won't suck any dick.